I can get Danny to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please. First off, I want to thank you all for coming tonight to our Codeapalooza opening presentation and map exercise. If you have not done so, please make sure that you do sign in before you leave today. Do remember that there's also drop-in times for the next 2.5 days over at the Rock Gym. There are also breakout sessions that are schedules are on your table. So we certainly hope that you guys spread the word and let's get some more people out here and get some more people involved. So at this time, I will turn it over.
All right. Well, thanks so much for everybody coming. Looks like we have some new faces in the crowd from a few weeks ago when we had our kickoff presentation and discussion. So tonight we're going to cover some new ground, but catch people up for we're not here. And then also, as you know, I think this is being recorded and broadcast, and so there'll be somebody who skips the kickoff discussion from a few weeks ago and goes straight to this one. So for those who are returning frequent flyers, thank you for coming back, and just bear with me on the stuff where you're like, I remember that slide. And then after the presentation, we're going to have just a couple of minutes of Q&A, and then we're going to jump into your mapping exercise. And then at the end of that, each table is going to present your 5 big ideas, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A, and we'll sit here until y'all are done asking questions. So I'll jump on in. So I'm Brian Wright, and I am the principal of Town Planning and Urban Design Collaborative, and I'm leading a team of people to help you all figure out what to do with your zoning ordinance. So you see here we've got Build Loganville, and I have to give credit where credit is due. I was talking to Lisa Newberry, and she's like, we just need to build better. And it's like, that's a great idea. How about we do this, brand the whole thing that, because when it's like zoning code Loganville, or it's like not too exciting. So Build Better Loganville. We got excited about that. So let's see if my clicker will work here. It was working earlier. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Yeah. So here's some of the rest of the team. A couple of them are here. We've got Anna and Brian, the other Brian. And Anna's a project manager for you all, and Brian's one of the team members. Also, tomorrow, my dad will be here. That's Bill Wright, so I have the same last name. He's a land use attorney, and he's kind of the one who gets into all the nuts and bolts of the zoning writing for us. And so he had to go to a funeral tomorrow, so he'll be joining us later. And then for those who are new, we work all over the country. We're out of Franklin, Tennessee. And the thing that's nice about working elsewhere is that we get to see what's working for some people and what's not working, and we get to see what their issues are and kind of say, oh, well, that's similar to what you guys have going on, or that's different than what you have going on, and bringing some ideas from here and there. But as you'll see throughout this process, it's most important to make sure that we aren't just importing a bunch of weird ideas that don't make sense here, and that's what we count on you guys to help us with as we go through this process. So some examples of some of the work we've done. We did the zoning recently in Monroe, so just down the road as well. If y'all are familiar with Monroe, I'm sure you are. Some people have said they like what Monroe's doing, and we can't take all the credit for what Monroe's doing. They were doing some neat stuff before we even got there. So this is the timeline. We had that kickoff on February 3rd. Since we left you all last time, we went back and we were doing our homework and doing some analysis and sort of reviewing your existing documents. And then here we are at the beginning of the Codeapalooza. And then after we leave here, we'll start drafting the initial client draft of the ordinance. That'll go to staff to review. Then they'll give us some comments and make sure we haven't done anything crazy or left anything on the cutting room floor that was should have been included, and then the public draft will come out, and that public draft will be made available for everybody to review and give your comments on. And then once we get those comments, staff will give us direction on what to do with those comments, and then we'll work on preparing the final ordinance, and then it'll be ready for adoption for you guys to start taking it through your official process. So all the stuff that we're doing up until that winter time is all sort of just bonus, right? So a lot of times people would just update a zoning ordinance, and staff would just sort of go off in their office and make some updates, and then you'd show up and you'd hear about some updates, and then you go for it. So this is all in an effort to get y'all's opinion and input as we go forward, so we're not just shooting in the dark. So that's very helpful for us when y'all come and participate. So here we were at the kickoff. We see some of the same people, some new people. We've got the project website. We've been getting some good participation on that, which has been helpful. But go there, buildbetterloganville.com. If you had ideas, you missed something, you want to catch up to what, the recordings are on there, and you want to share new ideas or whatever. And then this is the schedule for the Codeapalooza. So starting tomorrow, we've got at the Rock Gym, we'll actually be setting up our temporary office there, and we'll be there for the next several days through Thursday. And then we'll be working real time. We'll be writing things, and you can drop in anytime. We'll have a series of topical meetings. We have our open studio, so from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Tuesday and Wednesday, and on Thursday from 9 until noon. And that's basically us just being available to you all to drop in, because we know people have crazy schedules that don't always sync up with specific times to be somewhere. So we want to make sure that that's a possibility for you. Oh, going crazy here. I forgot to mention the topical meeting number 1 at noon tomorrow is on housing and neighborhood character. And then we've got a meeting at 6 o'clock about infill and redevelopment. So hopefully that's sort of a lunchtime meeting. If you have a lunch break or an evening meeting after work, you can come to that. And then we've got meeting number 3, streetscapes and walkability. And that would be on Wednesday at noon as well in the gym. And that's sort of a roundtable type of discussion. So we'll have a table. Everybody can just sit down around the table and talk together. I'll be there with you going through that. And then we've got the closing presentation on Thursday at 6:30 p.m. back in this room here. There we go. So you have a comp plan. Sorry, I apologize. My clicker was working perfectly before you all got here. I think it's all of your big thoughts are giving it interference. So comprehensive plan, for those who are new, is the high-level document. It sort of sets your policy, your vision for the future, where you want to go. If you haven't read that, take a look at it. But it really is sort of the beginnings of every decision that you make in the city moving forward. It has these different goals in it: intentional growth and proactive growth, clear and unified vision, et cetera. So go through and study that a little bit if you have time tonight before you come in tomorrow. It's okay if you don't as well, but you have some good ideas in there, some good goals. There's these sort of top 6 goals that are in there. And then zoning, which is what we're here to talk about. So zoning kind of comes from that comprehensive plan. Zoning are the rules and regulations. It doesn't necessarily make somebody do something. It just tells them what they can do with their property when they decide to do something with it. And so that's what we're going to be working on as we go through this process of the next several days. So what is zoning? I showed this the other night. It can give you a place that's like this, where you might actually want to go visit on vacation, but it can also give you a place like this. And we drove past here on the way today, I think. So it was not exciting. And so, you see things like this in the newspaper: stop sign for development, and people showing up with signs and not in my backyard and all of these things. And it's no wonder when you get what you see in the last slide, like, who was for that, right? The thing that's interesting, though, is that this is actually a developer. People made a statue of this developer, and they call him a town founder now. And then Coral Gables is sort of this nice neighborhood in Miami area. This was Merrick, I think, was his last name. And here he is with the blueprints in his hand, standing in front of what now is, I think, it's its own city now. They made a city hall. But imagine a developer having a statue built of them because people loved what they did so much. That doesn't happen often today. So things have changed. I showed this the other night. I asked people all around the country, what do you want? And they say, I just want a great small town. I want to be like Mayberry. And so I looked at what Mayberry was, and we found an image of the back lot where they shot it, and it's just a small town, it looks like, I never knew it wasn't a real place, and all my childhood ideas were shattered when I saw that. But this is what most people, get. They say, I want Mayberry, and then development comes through and it looks about like this. And this is totally fine. I grew up in a neighborhood that wasn't quite to this extent, but, same kind of idea, very suburban and these cul-de-sacs and things. And it's a fine way to live. But most people don't find it to be a fair trade, right? The farm that used to be there, the woods that used to be there, they got a new subdivision. How has that made our lives better, our community have a better identity, et cetera? And so we get pushback from that, and that's why you see people carrying signs and putting up signs in their yard and things. So zoning does a few things on purpose, and only a few things. And the main thing it does is it separates one use from the next. And so here, in this case, this was a commercial zoning on the map, so you get a commercial pod there. There's an office color on the map, and so you get an office pod over there. And then you have a residential color on the map, so you get a single family pod. And then another residential color might give you a multifamily pod. And then I told you all last time that I think about this as sort of like a train wreck where all the train cars are all scattered after they've derailed. And this is, when people say, we don't want multifamily, we hear this all over the country. Then they say, our housing is too expensive here, my kids can't live in town, and I can't, all of these things, we have a housing problem, et cetera. And, I always ask the question, who here has never lived in an apartment? And always there's one or two people in the crowd who've raised their hand, but nearly everyone else has. But we still have the idea we don't want apartments. Well, there's a few different reasons, and a lot of times people forget that they used to live in apartments. But I think one of the biggest objections that people have is that it's one of the biggest types of buildings that you see in any given city. And there's no rhyme or reason to how it's laid out, and it bears no resemblance to anything that anybody loves about their city. And oftentimes they're built cheaply, they're built sort of in a way that people don't care about, and so all of a sudden then you start getting issues along with that. And so when you think about how apartments and multifamily used to look, it was much different in the past, and you see these little apartment houses, 4-plex, 6-plex, 10-plex, and some of these places that people love. And so, times have changed a lot when it comes to multifamily. And it's a challenge. And then the school pod as well, and the school has become quite an industrial operation these days because it looks nearly like a factory. But this is what used to happen. This is what people used to do. They used to make towns and villages. They didn't even have zoning back then. It was just intuitive, like you mix things up. The way you do that is you make the buildings speak to one another architecturally, through materials, etc. And so if you look at this image, there's the sort of the town square where the church is there and the little gazebo and the green space. So that's where people go to have parades and festivals and celebrations. And around it would be some commercial spaces and maybe people living above the shop that they ran, or they rent out a space above the shop that they might get their, sort of flour at or whatever. And then as you move down the street, the commercial starts to fade away, and maybe there's some denser housing. The lots are smaller, the buildings are closer to the street. And as you move away from that, it gets less dense until you get up on the hillside there for the people who really don't want to know their neighbors, and that's okay. But when you look at what's up on the hill and what's in the town square, they're compatible. It all worked together, and you didn't have to separate things. And once we started getting more industrial scale uses and things that could actually kill you, like what the factory was making, you didn't want that near your house. And so we said, okay, that makes sense. Let's separate that thing. But we just started taking it further and further and further and getting it more and more fine grained. And so that when we started losing the knowledge about how to design buildings that are compatible and speak together, you said, I don't want my single family house next to something that's commercial. Have you seen the 7-Eleven, right? Well, used to people would say, it's so great, I live right 2 doors down from the corner store and I can just walk there. And the buildings that were next to the corner store were actually more valuable than the ones that were further away. And so we've lost that because we've forgotten how to build buildings that speak to one another and how to make places that go together and feel cohesive. So intermingled uses rather than separated uses. And then even on a finer grain, right? Buildings can communicate with us. And so on the left, this building says cars live here. And the buildings on the right say people live here. right? Well, the thing about it is the building on the right that says people live here actually has provision for a car to park. They have a garage too. They just didn't put it on the front of the house such that you can't even find the front door. That's not an alley, by the way. That's the street view of these houses here. And you can imagine, as a pedestrian, a visitor, somebody who lives in the neighborhood, which one would you want to walk past, right? Now, again, these on the left are all over the place. You know, like it's just a normal way of building. So often, though, it's just what the builders build. And so you go like, oh, is this your dream house? Or like, no, it was just what was available, it was what I could afford at the time, et cetera. And a lot of times the reason why it's what you could afford at the time was because what's on the right is so lovely that it actually maintains its value over time and is more expensive than the alternative, just because the parts and pieces in that building were put together in a different way. Now, probably when the house on the right was built, they didn't have rules and regulations that told you you had to do it. They just knew that's how you should do it, and so they did, and we've lost that. And so now we write rules and regulations that can require that. Not that it's going to require the building be turquoise or have a pyramidal roof, or maybe it does. Maybe it says that it can't have a flat roof, right? So we want the roof to be pitched because the small town charm in our community has pitched roofs, not flat roofs or whatever. But the biggest thing here is we can say that the garage doesn't go on the front. To get to the garage, you go past it, and it's set back a certain amount. And these are the simplest things that we can put in a zoning ordinance that make the biggest difference. So, and this is just one image. I could use many, many images to explain more detailed things about zoning. But, and I showed this last time, and this is a little cartoon that shows the difference between how we used to make towns and villages up on the top of the slide versus how we do today. And so you see on the bottom of the slide, there's the that runs through the middle, and then you've got the different pods, the work pod, the shopping pod, the school, the housing pod, and none of them connect to one another. And so when you go to shop, if you want to go to the CVS, you're going to go get your Advil, and now you got to get in your car and you got to drive down the road to the next thing that you could have easily walked to if there was a place where you wanted to walk, it was connected. Or you could have even driven a few doors down and not gotten on the collector road if the parking lots weren't disconnected from one another. And so all of the streets you'll notice on the top part of the slide are connected to one another. You have that connectivity, you have that intentional through traffic, right? But because all of the roads are connected, no one road gets all the traffic. So you don't even notice the drive-through, people coming through your neighborhood. As we always hear people say, people are going to cut through my neighborhood. And I talked about last time in the historic grid of streets, there's the idea of cut-through traffic isn't even a thing because all the streets are obviously intended to connect together. And so some of these things are different. So they made communities that were walkable. So they had sidewalks and street trees and often on-street parking, and all of these things make the pedestrian feel safer and more comfortable walking around. They're compact often, rather than just sort of spreading out, doing gigantic lots all across the countryside and eating up the farms and all that. They take one area and they would develop it in a more compact way, and then they would actually preserve the areas outside, right? Because a lot of times there's this idea that if we have these larger, acre, 2-acre lots or something like that, it's going to somehow make us feel rural. We're going to, maintain that small town charm. But a 1-acre or 2-acre lot doesn't fool anyone. We all know it's not a farm. It's just a really big suburban lot, and it's a lot of grass to cut, and people aren't wanting that these days. Would you rather have woodland, and some smaller lots that are over here, and then this other area is actually preserved in perpetuity so that it can't just be developed later on? Often, too, you'd have the idea of mixed use. So even in a neighborhood, you'd have that corner store that I was talking about, a little bit of neighborhood convenience, so you could walk to those uses and not have to get in your car. And then there would be a diversity of housing types, so you could live in different house in the same neighborhood at different stages of your life. And different family members could live there, or the teacher can live near her students, or the firefighter can live near the people who they're saving, whatever. Things are different now. So what we've heard so far as we've been talking and listening, so we've asked what you like the most about Loganville. People talked about the parks and outdoors, family friendly, the geographic location, and the small population. That small population is always a challenge to hold on to as time progresses, and especially if you're doing things well. People want to be where you are, and so that's hard. Then we asked people also, what are the challenges that are facing Loganville? We heard about high density development, and then we've still been getting to the bottom of what that means, right? And so some people are talking about multifamily or apartments. We've also seen some people talking about like small cottages as considering that high density. And so I guess it depends on your perspective on it. Traffic, infrastructure, housing affordability, and the abundance of chain businesses. There's a desire to have more mom and pop kind of businesses. And the thing about mom and pops is they're very, very sensitive to their habitat, right? And so if you don't have the habitat that supports mom and pop, it's hard to get them. Every now and then you get one that goes like, we have the best lasagna, the best Italian restaurant, and we're gonna go right in this horrible strip mall. And it's so good that no one cares that it's in the horrible strip mall. They're gonna go no matter what. But for the most part, the mom and pop want to be in a place that has character, charming, all of those things. And so if you don't have that environment, you'll always get the change because they love the lack of character because they thrive on repeating their model over and over and over in a place where no one cares what their signage looks like, what colors they use, what materials they use. I noticed you guys have these two gas stations right across from each other. They look new, and they're both tan brick. They're like fancy, really nice looking gas stations. And, like, I don't know if that was an arm twisting thing or if they were just competing with each other. Like, well, they've got tan bricks, so we're doing tan bricks. But normally they all just want to do what they do over and over from town to town, which is why you can't tell when you enter Loganville or leave Loganville. I mean, the other towns nearby. Of course, y'all are all unique, I'm sure. But when you drive from one place to another, you can't tell, except for it says welcome to and see you later, And so if you want to be unique and distinct and get that stuff, you've got to take action in order to make that happen. We said, what should the zoning ordinance update accomplish? Guide growth intentionally, protect small town charm, establish a clear community vision, strengthen the downtown, manage housing density, and improve walkability and connectivity. That second bullet point is really hard because, again, small town charm means something different to everybody. So as we go through this process together, we're going to try to hone in on what that means a little bit more. Does it mean Mayberry? Does it mean something more intense than Mayberry? Does it, as we go through this tonight, maybe that's one of the things you guys can talk about. What does small town charm mean to you? So we'll maybe talk about that at the end. I'll ask you that question again so you can start thinking about it now. And then also intentional, oh, wait, that's a repeat, sorry. Yeah, okay, so what will the updated zoning ordinance do? So we're going to be cleaning up the existing ordinance, which we heard could use a little bit of cleanup, and we've seen that now that we've been doing our homework, as all zoning ordinances need. And then protecting the most loved parts of the city, enhancing areas that need improvement, and that's one of the things we're going to do tonight is start to zero in on what areas need improvement and what areas you love the most. Creating more predictable outcomes so you don't have to be fearful of development each time you hear that something's going to happen on a piece of property or there's something that's available and for sale pops up and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I bet we're going to hate it. You'll go, oh, I can't wait to see what they do with this. That we have the new zoning code is in place that's protecting us, right? Creating something for everyone and in the right place for everything. So not having a one size fits all, right? Kind of like that same idea of you may love living on a 2-acre lot. It may be the worst thing that somebody else has ever heard of. That why would I possibly do that? And so if we make everything the same, then you're going to limit automatically the people who want to not just move here, because you may go, I don't want people to move here. It also limits the people who want to stay here, because different stages of your life, you have different preferences. Like, you kind of over cutting the grass, or you want to travel and, and I don't have that dog anymore. Now my kids are gone. I don't need a yard for them to play in, or whatever the case may be. Sometimes there's just a flip flop as you move in different stages of your life. People move to larger spaces as they need it, and people move down from larger spaces, but it isn't usually a 1-to-1 ratio. And so we have to figure that out together. Balancing all modes of transportation transportation so that you don't have to drive everywhere for everything all the time, enhancing economic viability, keeping you all competitive and giving you a unique advantage over even surrounding communities. And then making something that is easier to use and administer. That's something for staff to make their lives easier, for developers, and for citizens, as you all are kind of assessing whether or not somebody's doing what the ordinance says. You actually have a zoning ordinance you can read and understand what it means. So we're going to go through, we're going to do synoptic surveys, we're going to measure, document what the setbacks and heights and all of these things so we understand the DNA of the city. We're doing a translation where we've already started this, looking at your existing zoning districts and are there ways to consolidate and combine some of them? Do you have too many? Do you have too few? And then we're also going to be having uses. I've been talking about how uses and separating all the uses creates all these sort of faceless, nameless places that no one loves. But we will still have uses in the ordinance. So don't take that away from what I'm saying. Yep. And then even some standards for creating hybrid places, some that focus on, kind of meeting the needs of cars or bigger box, but also making them walkable and lovely as well. So we're going to go through and understand those needs as well. So community character is one of the things we're going to be focusing on. So right now it looks like what makes sense, and we're just testing this out here. So this is, y'all let us know if you have thoughts. But the R44, the R22, the R16 districts will remain. Those are kind of the stable, sort of normal residential districts. We've not been in many places where community says, we really want you to do something with our neighborhood zoning district. And so we're trying to focus on the areas where people are more concerned about, we'd like to see something different happen there, as opposed to the things that are happening already that people are happy with. So we're then looking at how do we take some of the inspiration from some of the places that people have been telling us about and add some new zoning districts that focus on giving you this different type of character, right? So this is a CD, stands for character district. So this we're calling the CD3, and this is what a sub-urban, not suburban, but suburban, less than urban. And so you can see this is a single family house on a single family lot. And what's interesting about it is that the image on the left, these are much smaller lots, obviously, than the one on the right. Usually what you want to do in a real place that's organically kind of grown up over time is you don't even have a one-size-fits-all lot size. Like a lot of times we'll hear like, oh, all the lots in this zoning district are 4,000 square foot lots or whatever, how many foot lots? Well, we don't even think about square footages of lots. It's such an irrelevant number. Nobody knows what the square footage of a lot is, because this lot on the left could be just as many square feet as the lot on the right. How, you might say? Because the one on the left is much narrower than the one on the right. It could be much, much deeper. It could be infinitely deep. And the one on the right could be right at the back of the house. The way that a real human being perceives a place is the width of a lot and the spacing between buildings. That's how people perceive it. And so a lot of times what we find in zoning districts are measuring and setting dimensions for things that are not relevant to people. Talking about the number of feet, the height of a building and number of feet, I don't know, right? But I do know those are 2 stories. So talking about a number of stories, well, how do you know somebody's not going to make a story that's 40 feet tall? And I say, they probably aren't going to be in business very long if they're doing that. There's a certain amount of common sense of things that people do, but if you must, you can set sort of a minimum or maximum floor to ceiling height if whatever, if we don't trust human ingenuity and their desire to stay in business. So anyway, so these are some of the kind of common sense things that we're going to be talking about in these districts as well. So CD4, neighborhood center, and this isn't necessarily in the midst of a neighborhood, by the way, not an existing neighborhood, unless somebody says, can you add a little CD4 in our neighborhood? We've got this spot over here that would be perfect for it. We'd love to walk to a little, cafe or whatever. But what you'll start to see is, there's commercial on the ground floor. There's sometimes residential or office above. Sometimes you see townhouses or a live-work building in this district as well. And so this would be a new district, right? And then here's one for corridor, CD4C corridor. This is an interesting one because a lot of times when we're working in a place like this where you have all these sort of suburban corridors where it's like the worst examples of design, right? And layout of, there's giant parking lots out in front of all these buildings, and you think, who in the world would ever want to walk around there? Well, I agree in its current state. And people say, well, we've also got this strip mall that's so dated, so it's like 10% occupancy, it's now, they turned it into a roller rink, whereas it used to be shops because there's nothing going on inside or whatever. And so what we'll see is that these big parking lots for some of these strip malls and things are way bigger than they need to be. And so there's ways to redevelop them. And so this is kind of an interesting one. This was done not as redevelopment, but from scratch. So this is in Nolensville, Tennessee, and the buildings you see in the image on the left, those are what we call liner buildings. So there's like 20-foot deep buildings, and they have just random little shops that go in there. But just behind them, go through this archway here, there's a full-size Publix back there, and it's giant parking lot. But when you drive by from the main road on the corner there, all you see is this sort of Main Street looking thing going on. And so you've got this sort of best of both worlds. It still feels like it's a great place. It adds to the image and the character of the community. It fits that small town charm, but you still get your big, awesome Publix and its giant, awesome parking lot that people want to have there. So anyway, so that's a CD4C for corridor. And then CD5 Urban Center. This is one to try to dial in a little bit. You guys have your little Main Street area, their little, is it like a block and a half or whatever, and then the town green and some spaces around it, and and so just depending on how y'all want that to be in the future. I know you got the library going on in one corner, and then there's that house that will never be sold on the other side, but houses always do get sold eventually. And so just kind of thinking through, looks like you've got a good bit of space around there for something to happen. So y'all will help us figure out, like, is this too much or is this okay or whatever. So these are just placeholder pictures, by the way, so not proposals. And then you got your light industrial district, your heavy industrial district. Those will stay, as they are, because you need the industrial stuff to, bring in tax revenue and whatnot. And then your civic district, and that's for things like, parks and civic buildings go in civic districts as well. That's kind of just the way that we think about it. So ultimately, we need to create zoning that works for Loganville. We need it to work for the community. I went through this the other night, but work for the community. It needs to work for businesses, for sure. We want them to thrive and do well. It needs to work for the policymakers, your elected and appointed officials, so that they can get excited about it and know that y'all are all supporting it as well and feel good about voting for it. For people of all ages, as people are living longer and longer with all of our innovations and breakthroughs and health care and all that stuff, especially now with AI is doing all this stuff, and we're going to live forever before too long. So we need to make sure there's a spot for us forever to be in the same place, so you don't have to leave the city when you get to that certain point where it doesn't make sense for you. Works for visitors as well, and then works for the developers. We talked about a lot of times there's a rub between developers and the community. People feel like the developers are just trying to make every penny they can off of it, and they're clear cutting the land and all of these things, and you wouldn't be wrong. However, it's okay to make as much money as you can. It may not be okay to clear cut, and maybe that's something that we want to work on through this process. But it is okay to develop, because without developers, you all would be stuck in time, and you might have a seed and feed in a general store at the crossroads of here and there, and y'all wouldn't have what you have. So it can be good, especially if you're proactive about it, which this process is, to get you where you want to be going down the road. But most importantly, what we do through this process has to represent the essence of Loganville. And that's why y'all are so important, because as you've been hearing me say, well, I need y'all to help me figure this out, figure that out. That's really what this is all about as we go through this process together. So why does it matter, right? So all the slides that came before are kind of like explaining one way or another of doing things or whatever, but I found these slides, and this is so interesting. So these are images of houses that are built by a national home builder. Don't even remember which one what one it is. So I went on their webpage because people kept saying, we don't want the national home builders in here. They're just messing stuff up. They're just doing these subdivisions and cookie cutter, not all the things I'm sure y'all may have heard around even in this room before, right? So this is a series of images from a home builder. Ow! Pardon me. Talk amongst yourselves. All right, where were we? Aha. Okay. So, national home builder, same home builder. So far, I've not seen anybody go like, oh, I love these. But I've had lots of people say, oh, wow, that's so cool. Those are new buildings? Like, what's the difference? Why did they do this in some communities and then that elsewhere, right? They know how to do it. The reason is they were made to do it one place and they weren't made to do it another place. And so you can decide what you get. Now, they may say, well, that's because this community is a market where people won't pay anything, blah, 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 whatever. But it isn't necessarily the case. Now, here's a fun little case study here. I would wager to say those floor plans are pretty much about the same, right? Yeah, the little gingerbread on the porch there probably costs some extra money for sure. How bad would it be for the house on the right if you didn't have that gingerbread on there, right? You know what also isn't on there? The garage is not stuck to the front of the building, right? So small little changes can make a big difference in whether or not you're excited about a new development or not. Townhouses. The ones on the right aren't even the most lovely example of new townhouses I've seen, but they're so much better than the ones on the left, right? The ones on the left, like a townhouse is not meant to have access from the street. It's meant to be accessed from an alley, right? And so if you have a garage on the ground floor of a townhouse, it means the entire ground floor is the garage. And that is not how a townhouse was ever meant to be. It's like they use that term because they're connected in the way that townhouses once were. But it's a whole nother thing. And no one gets excited about that being built. It may be fine. You may be excited about it if you're moving in because you're like, oh, this is way better than where I lived before. That's fine. Don't get me wrong. If this may be one of your houses, right? It's not a commentary on any particular thing that any individual has going on, because as I drive around, I think about, like my progression and how when I was looking at my first house, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And today I would be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. Look at that. The detail is all wrong there. Da, da, da. It's, it's all relative for sure. So please don't get me wrong. I'm just speaking in a much bigger picture sense here, in that certain things make a big difference when it comes to design and development. So now that hopefully your creative juices are flowing, we're going to do your table exercise here. So you've got dots on the table, you got markers on the table. So put blue dots where you see opportunities, where you might like to see some things happen. Put red dots where things aren't going so great, that there's room for improvement there. Put green dots on the places you love, and use the markers. This is important. Listen to this. Use the markers to say what it is you're making your dot on, because we don't know if you don't do it. Because what we're going to do is when y'all are all done, we're going to take all of these dots and all your notes, and we're going to extract all of it off these maps. And so we have to know what it means. And then you're also going to put some, if you've got three to five big ideas, like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we did this or something like that happened, you can write that down the side there. And so at the end of like 20 minutes, 30 minutes maybe, depending on how into it you guys are, we'll stop, and each table will pick a map holder and a presenter, and you'll share your 3 to 5 big ideas with everybody. We're going to go through each table, and it's really great because what happens is you start hearing, one, what other people's thoughts are, but two, you start realizing that, Look at that. Not everybody agrees with me. That's so weird. All my friends do. Or maybe they do. Maybe y'all are all on the same page in Loganville. So, but before we do that, I know sometimes after I go through 80 slides like that, there's like some burning question that somebody cannot focus on the map if they don't ask me. So like 2 questions here. Anybody have something just they're dying to ask me? Or y'all just want to jump right in? Okay, color codes. Yes, so it's on that little piece of paper there. But so blue for places of opportunity. You may not have so many of those because you don't have much green field or whatever. And then red for areas that need improvement. And sometimes the areas that need improvement are also places for opportunity. And then green are places you love. Okay? So we're going to put up a timer, I think, in here. And we're going to say on your mark, get set, go. All right, all right. This is great. Time's up. Pencils down, markers down. Perfect. All right, so you've got your map holder and your presenter picked out, and we're going to start with table number 3. Okay, we're going to start with table number. Do you guys have a presenter and a map holder? Oh, man. All right. You guys want to go? Okay, let's go. All right. Do we have an extra mic so that they can, or I'll just give them my mic. Here we go. And if y'all just want to come up to the front, too. What? Oh, sorry. We're going to wait for a couple of minutes for all the people who've stepped out. Yep. Yeah. Anybody else need a bathroom break? Feel free to take one. All right, here we go. So we're going to start with these guys. They're going to go through in 5 minutes or less.
Okay.
And then we're going to get to the next group. So if you're on deck, then you can get ready. Go ahead.
Okay, I think as an overall comment, it's instructive and I think interesting that it was much easier for us to identify opportunities than it was love or hate. So let's go through love and hate to get that out of the way to begin with. One is we love the way Fair Street has developed. There are some nice new homes down there that are craftsman style and very, very nice architecture, and some other homes that have a lot of potential for renovation. We love the library and what's happening there, and we love Meridian Park. In terms of hate, there are, as you get out 78 East past, I guess it's past Quick Trip or maybe around Quick Trip, there are some old, very old small buildings that are pretty ugly in terms of architecture. We're thinking of like Deaton's Gun Shop and the billiards store, and then some vacant buildings that it just seem to be placed there years ago and bear no.
But they have great guns and billiards.
Yeah,
there,
right. I'm sure they do. We see the granite slabs out by the road every day. So we also hate Sharon Commons because of the multi-roof townhomes with the garage door in the front. Same thing with Fuller Station. Same kind of design. We don't want more of that. In terms of opportunities, number one, we talked about on Pecan Street, there are some lots or some land available behind the strip mall that includes the Chicken Salad Chick, et cetera. I think there was some proposal for development there, but that's certainly an opportunity. Number two is, what was number two? Oh, also on Line Street, there's a large lot available. Well, went from Pecan to Line Street. There's a large lot available next to a very small, older church there. I think there might have been something proposed for there that didn't come through. Number 3 is Gaither Park. That could be developed and redeveloped. Number 4, the Ingalls Shopping Center. There are, and the shopping center next door that used to be the Ingalls Shopping Center. A lot of parking there, way more than is necessary. A lot of space. I think there are probably some empty storefronts there in the old Ingalls Shopping Center. Number 5 is the Kuppenheimer. Right now, I don't know what's in there, if anything, but we've got RV trailers parked out front next to the 78. Number 6 is the property behind Popeyes. I guess that's on, I don't know what road that is, but it's on 78 behind Popeyes. Number 7 is the large vacant property across from Loganville Ford that goes a long way down 78 and backs up against Lake Hodges subdivision. Number 8 is Twin Lakes Road at West Walton Park. I think, and then number 9 is related to that, Twin Lakes Road between the parks, I guess West Walton and Meridian Park. There's I think been some discussions going on there whether that's more appropriate for residential versus commercial, and I guess you could argue either one based on what's around there. Number 10 is 254 Main Street and the property behind it on Pecan Street. It's been vacant for a long time. There's some ideas about development there. And then the City Hall property. There's a pretty sizable piece of property that has a lot of potential for future development, whether it be mixed use probably. So I think that's about it. If anybody has any questions or comments, we'd be glad to hear those.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's been here. It's great. All right, let's go to this second table here. There. What? Yep. We're just going to work our way around and end up at 6. Yeah. I'm just going around the room here.
Thank you, Dana.
I'll give the map holder a tip. Don't hold the map too high, because all of a sudden that gets real heavy.
Okay, well, we don't have very many dots because we spent more time talking about what we liked at each place, as what we wanted. Yeah. So, but the one thing that we do love, yeah, we didn't want to, because we know everybody in here is going to talk about downtown, so we tried to stay out. But we do want to say we do love the town green. I know one thing that we're looking at out here, there's a large piece of parcel of property that right now is not in the city, and I know within probably the next decade, they're going to probably ask to be annexed in. And it's a huge opportunity. It's several hundred acres. And there's an opportunity there because that's where you could put your estate homes, you could put some $1 million homes out there. So we'd like to look at some zoning that would address some potential. It's on 78. Yeah.
Like over by Maxi Price.
Yeah, it's on down there. So there's nobody said anything. We just know with what's coming, it's coming. So we got to be prepared for that, and we got to look ahead at that. We have a lot of opportunities.
Sharon Church Road, Sharon Commons, we agree.
Yes.
We agree. And Fuller Station, we agree.
Yes. One of our opportunities that we liked, and I don't know where it's at on the map, is Fates Crossing. When you were showing the one with the Publix in behind there and everything, there's a strip mall across from Dick's and Lowe's. It's Fates Crossing back there where the butcher shop is, and there's a furniture store there. That's a great opportunity to do one of those type projects.
Same thing for
Yeah,
Ingalls?
character. In Ingalls, there's more parking, and like y'all said that. We're trying not to hit the same things. The kudzu field down across from the police department that has been zoned, it was going to be an ice cream park, it's going to be a boutique hotel, it's going to be everything. That's a nice corner, it's a very valuable piece of real estate. We need to look at something great there. Tuck Farms, again, another opportunity to have some high quality estate type houses. Let's see. the Clay property that we just recently annexed in, that we did R16 or something. That's a great opportunity to look at some different types of housing in there, so get creative in there.
And the airport property is a great place for
Yeah, and then where Dean King's house was, over on C.S. Floyd, it's a great place. You're downtown. We don't have a park downtown, so it'd be a great place to have some walking trails, some parks, some things like that. And
and another character district behind Bojangles, just like what Dana said.
yeah. But yes, what we don't want, we do not like.
Sharon Commons.
Yes.
Fuller Station.
Yeah, we don't want any more of that.
Yeah, we're done with that.
Yeah. And then on the corner of Bobby Boss and 78, where the north side medical complex is going in,
Cross Mingles.
there's a piece of property that's up for sale now right there on the corner of Bobby Boss and 78. What? Oh,
One thing we left?
yeah, that was the town green. Yeah, we got that.
get that.
But yeah, that would be a great, if we're going to do that, like there's already a medical complex there and across the street is some medical. We just keep going with that. That'd be a great opportunity to look at some type of medical facility there.
I think that's it. That's everything on our list.
I get to hold. Get to talk. So, great. Yeah, great going so far. Everybody's mentioned real specific. We were more general when we looked at it, but it's the same concepts that we're hearing from you guys as well. We start off with so we start off downtown. We like the center downtown. Marie lives right downtown. We would like to see, we like the open spaces, keep maintaining those and making sure that we keep in some places for playground, that type of thing. We love our parks and we want to improve them. Opportunities, just like we're talking about, like the Ingalls and Kuppenheimer and other places down that are just not, that are opportunities to reuse those properties and spruce them up. So we thought that was a big thing. We also think that, hey, there's it's not zoning, but what do we want eventually? We want a community that invites something that provides more entertainment for us, for our kids, and places to go. So we're hoping that this all comes together, and it's going to take a while. We know it's not going to be overnight. And then needs improvement, the same things that you're talking about. Y'all were real specific on the naming the visual, what we see, the commons and all that. But you get these areas where you go in and build a subdivision, and it's all just the plow and put the subdivision back. Okay, there's got to be some, if you're going to do an R22 or R22 or whatever, you got to save some open space. You got to spread it out some. You've got to do something that is just not 100% of a residential, and then everything else is gone. We also think that there's some opportunities, about having some more walkability, connectivity between these communities and getting downtown and around. But it's all so far great stuff. That's it. Good job, Claire.
Okay, so we have a lot of red down 78. It needs some improvement, I'll be honest. And I don't know if this is the time or place for this, but there's a couple of spots in town that we could use some better traffic control, like in front of Publix, because you know how it's hard to make a left turn out of there. And then over on 81 at Rock Road, because how many times are there accidents there that we all have to deal with? So those are two big ones. Obviously, some of the shopping centers and stuff mentioned, like the Ingalls, I mean, it's an eyesore. And that's really kind of the way 78 is. It's just a hodgepodge of stuff. I'd like to see some signage. I know that it's kind of retroactive, but I like to see some signage, to good guidelines on they're all the same. Kind of like what Hilton Head has, where they're all very nice. They're same size. They're not gigantic. They're not real small, but it's like consistent. The other thing is the things that we do love are downtown. Love Town Green. Love the Rock Gym. Love the new library going in. All of that redevelopment or development is fantastic. There's a couple spots that need some development. There's over off of 81. Right there, there's a daycare, and there looks like there was the start of some office buildings. That needs to be developed. I know for at least 10 years that was put in, and nothing's ever happened. So something needs to happen there. And then on 78, if we can control like what goes in on that open strip across from the Ford dealership in that area, so where it's not an eyesore. I think that's kind of the bigger things that we mentioned. And then let's see. And we like the parks. That was the other thing. We like the parks. We got some great parks in town. I love Meridian. That's a great park. It's great walking around the lake. It's just really, really nice. But I think 78 just really could use some work, especially, like I said, the traffic control to get it consistent, because you know how it is in the afternoons. You can't get anywhere. So we just need kind of a better flow, I think. And I know that people are trying to make a left turn out of, by the Chick-fil-A or in front of the Ingles, and that's just an impossibility, and it backs everybody else up who's going to go right. So I think something needs to be done about that. So I think that covers about everything. And you guys all covered the other eyesores that were mentioned on shopping centers. So, all right. Thank you.
Number 7. Yeah, can we get him a map holder?
My partner had to leave early, so between her and I, we had some disagreements. But she was said, I guess, no data centers, no ice facilities, and no drones, no more drones.
Okay.
Pretty much, we repeated what y'all said about Highway 78 and all the strip malls needing improvements. Green spaces, she loved. Tuck Farms, she wanted that to remain green space. I'm okay with development of that, so we disagreed there. Things we mentioned that weren't mentioned before is Rocky Creek down here. I don't know how many hundreds of, 150 homes. They're all rental homes. It's been sitting there for a long time. The streets are in there, everything's ready to go, but it's been sitting there for a long time. Same way with Sharon Commons, right next door to my neighborhood. Our property values are going to go down because of that place. I don't know if it's going to be developed, or they're going to abandon it, or what. They've only sold 3 townhomes out of the 5 in the one building they built. Talked to the project manager, and they said they're not going to build any more townhomes, any more buildings until they sell all 5 of those. So they might just throw it in. I don't know. Green spaces opportunities, Meridian Park area, Twin Lakes. That's pretty much it. Downtown, Main Street, both improve existing conditions and also opportunities exist both there. I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. You can in the back there if you don't mind. Well, that's great. Thank you all for taking the time to do that. Hopefully that was fun. And, now you're all going to have a new career. You're going to be planners. You love it. So I got a couple of questions now for you all that popped up as we were going through. One table mentioned some entertainment or things for kids. What kind of things do you think kids, and I don't know if you meant little kids or teenagers or whatever, but what do kids need or want to do around here? Any of you who have kids or grandkids? So we need a video game park, huh? Yeah. Movie theater? Yeah. A lot of people are doing that at home too. Yeah. Yeah. Y'all have like an ice cream shop or those kind of things? Yeah. They're not in the downtown in your nice little charming area.
Right around the corner.
Yeah. Huh.
Drive down 20, you'll see it on the right.
Sports complex. Okay.
A lot of people talk about a splash pad.
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I guess it could go with a splash
Okay.
pad.
Great. Let's see. So that was one. Y'all talked about a lot of the intersections and some troubles y'all have, even though this is just zoning. We think about these kind of things as well. That's more of a infrastructure and transportation kind of related thing. But we noticed on our way into town today that old Snellville was getting quite a few roundabouts in here. Have y'all on the roundabout merry-go-round here? Are y'all on? Yeah. Huh. It's interesting. I was telling somebody a minute ago, we worked in Carmel, Indiana, which is the roundabout capital of America. The mayor went to Europe and fell in love with roundabouts, and he was set out to transform every intersection in town to a roundabout. Even their interstate exits and entrances are like these figure-8 roundabouts. Wild. But the thing that's interesting about it, I hear a lot of times when it gets brought up, people are like, whoa, you hear this like rumble, like, whoa, roundabout. And I'm not sure what it is that people hate about them. Usually it's because they don't have one yet, and then they get it, and it's like no big deal. The thing about it, just for what it's worth, if y'all consider them at some point, when you get a roundabout, an intersection, the fatalities in intersection goes down to like 0. Because you never have a T-bone. It's always like a grazing, like scuff of the door or whatever, which is much better. So if that, proves to be something y'all are considering, don't count it out right away. There is a reason that people are doing it so often these days. Doesn't matter to me one way or the other. But it can, some of those traffic issues y'all talk about, and you go like, oh, well, if we grow, we're going to get traffic, and a lot of it is just that you have bad road infrastructure and bad intersections and bad signal timing and all that stuff. So sometimes things like roundabouts can help you start to feel more comfortable as sort of that inevitable growth happens, something to consider. So let's see. Consistent signage. We talked about, somebody mentioned Hilton Head. I've been to Hilton Head, and in the absence of like super charming mom and pop signs, I would take consistent signage for sure. So like on a strip highway, if like all the signs were, sort of the same height and the same material and the same color or whatever, like that's probably way better than the up and down and everybody competing, and they got the things doing this and the inflatable boots at the boot store and whatever, and so that's something to consider. However, imagine if you were in whatever the most awesome downtown, little historic downtown you've ever been to, and every single sign was the same font, the same paint, the same whatever. Wouldn't be nearly as charming, because a lot, like good stores, good design, they express themselves through their signage, and again, sometimes you don't even have to regulate it, because they wouldn't dare have an ugly sign with a little flashing and the letters doing all that stuff or whatever. So consistency can be good if you're in an area where it's more auto-centric and you're not going to get the cute, fun signs that are handmade or whatever. So that's something to keep in mind. You guys mentioned estate homes and $1 million homes. Tell me what that means here, because I know like
No rental property
okay.
means people vested in their community.
But it's not $1 million. Like that could
Right,
be
well-
$100,000.
You build a
Right,
$1 million
large-
house on a 3/4 acre lot, it's not gonna become a rental home. The people that live there are gonna be vested in it. They're gonna be vested in their community. They're gonna be vested in their city. And it brings in the taxes. Think about it.
So a 3/4 acre lot
There's
gets you $1
also
million
another thing
house.
that I didn't see on the map anywhere is, where are we gonna get jobs? Where are the people gonna work that live in Loganville? I didn't see one industrial area zoned out in that map anywhere.
Yeah, that's typical.
But to get those types of homes built and people to come in, you have to have the infrastructure to support that. You also have to have the businesses, the restaurants. We have probably everything's chicken. You need more better dining, more shopping, more everything to entice those type people that can afford those homes to come here.
Yeah, it's the chicken and an egg problem. How do you get the $1 million homes? And, yeah. No, but what I meant was it's not unusual for in an exercise like this for people to not to be like, I think we should put industrial here because one, nobody wants to be the one saying industrial should go because usually somebody who's around it, and two, they're dreaming about things and end up. But it's a fair point. Luckily, these days you see a lot of people working from home and doing those kinds of things. But you guys have the like Rivian and stuff going in nearby and some of those things. So hopefully some of that will, that's close enough to commute to from here, right? Is it? Yeah. Okay. I'm just making sure. I don't know. So, what I meant was physically, what does $1 million estate home look like in Loganville?
Well, a larger home on larger lots.
Right.
How big does it take? Or is it an
I would say
acre?
at least an acre.
Okay.
One home per 3/4 to an acre.
Okay.
Not necessarily $1 million home, but I mean, obviously with
Yeah.
a bigger lot like that, you're gonna be higher up, but.
But couldn't we have high-end?
Right, like how they built in Walton.
He just said, could you have a higher end home on a small lot, a smaller lot?
Sure. I mean, yeah, but we
Okay.
have a ton of that now, so,
We don't have high-end, though.
You have
well,
lots of smaller lots, but not higher end. And
Nice homes, but I mean, to bring in a lot of that, you're gonna need a golf course or something that's gonna bring in those high dollar homes.
could be. That's one of the ways that people have done it for sure. So one of the reason I'm asking is just to get clarity on what y'all mean specifically. And to your point, there needs to be some draw to make it that it would be more valuable to have a house in this place than that place, especially if the lot were smaller. The only way that people do that these days without some sort of a thing like a golf course or lake or whatever is by creating a real place, by creating a village, by creating something that has that character that you see in these historic places. And so, there are many, many neighborhoods all around the country where, you will have a $1 million home and it'll be on like less than 1/4 of an acre lot, 1/10 of an acre lot. And, obviously it depends where that community is geographically, overall in the real estate market, but also it only is going to happen if the place is of such character that it's exceptional in the area. So, yes, ma'am.
well, what about, I don't have children, but I understand that Loganville schools are supposed to be very desired. So is that something that would attract people if we, don't have the greatest looking community, but the schools, is that the draw that people would come and
Sometimes.
property and?
Yeah, sometimes it has to be really, next level, like, your kid's going to Ivy League if they go to elementary school in Loganville, and now I'm going to pay $1 million for the house. But what we see is in communities like that where, like, we're working in one community, and I said, what's your reason for being here, like, in this community? Because it was not obvious. There was no industry, and they said, it's the schools. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And the band, this band, and it's like okay, and their kids would get like band scholarships or whatever, and so like, okay, cool, I get that. The thing that happens though is on graduation day, all the for sale signs go up in the yards. They're out of there, and those who stayed, the kids going, and the place wasn't a place they wanted to come back, and so it was like not all that sustainable of a place to be. So yes, ma'am.
So, nobody said it tonight, but we were just saying that senior living developments are pretty much needed here.
Yeah.
'Cause you can't age in place in Loganville, there's
High
no
end.
And to that point though, if you have all these $1 million homes in here, a lot of us, all of the rest of the property values will be aged out because we won't be able to afford the taxes as we get to those senior ages.
Fair point, yeah. And if it's focused on a larger lot, that's most of the time people are heading down market. The older they get smaller and smaller lots and things. But to your point, you can have senior living, high-end senior living. And the thing that's interesting, what I was just describing to you about these sort of village-esque neighborhoods, they are sort of naturally attractive to seniors and to young families. And you've got sometimes developers like, oh, I'm doing senior housing because people are beating them up like, well, what about the schools? What about the infrastructure, the cost of, whatever. And they're like, okay, I'm going to do 55 plus. And they're like, okay, fine, you can do whatever you want. But then oftentimes what you'll find is the seniors get there and they're like, I am so bored. Like, what is going on? And so what you'll find is these new neighborhoods that are sort of a mix like that. The seniors will go there, and also the young families, and the seniors love it. They sit on their porch, and the families come by with their strollers, and then they're just like, oh, and it's not just a random young family. It's like, hey, grandma, you know, and so they're the same families in the same neighborhood. So there's ways that it can be done, and we can talk more about that as we go. But yes.
Okay, so a lot of people, we talked about the Ingalls and the Fates Crossing and all that, and that's all fine and good. My question is to put it into actual play. Those are all owned by somebody.
Yeah.
How do you incentivize them? How do you write a code that says, hey, look, it's to your benefit to do this? Because you can sit here all day and daydream this and go, I'd love to see this and I'd love to see that. Somebody owns this property, and I get sick and tired of the people that sit here and knock Main Street. Those people have owned that generationally. It's theirs to do what they want to with it. So how do you write a code that would incentivize people to change it? So to change your Ingalls, to change your Publix, to change your buildings downtown, because quit knocking people that own stuff and incentivize them and educate them into how they can bring more money to their pocket by doing it. How do you do that through code?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways you can do it. One is assuming that the people aren't just going to let their buildings fall down around them. They have to do maintenance at some point. The zoning can simply just say, when you improve your building, you shall do X, Y, and Z, right? Okay. Some places they're not comfortable with that even, and it's like it's got to be a change of use, and it's got to be, you know, it just depends on how sensitive you are to the prior owners. Typically the way that it's incentivized is, you notice those buildings that I showed that were around the Publix, they had a second story on them. And that second story adds all that square footage that they before could only have had on the one floor, right? So now you've given them additional value in the property, and that can be some of this like, okay, well, we know we need some multifamily, or we need some office space, or we need whatever. That can happen up there. And in the context of a new mixed-use building, right, you've got now the person who has an economic vested interest in what's happening on the ground floor, making sure that any multifamily that's happening above it is of quality and is not going to get run down and be problematic. And so it's sort of like this built-in safety measure for you. And so that's an incentive. Now you've got more square footage than you did before. Sometimes there are things you can do, you know, where the city goes a bit even further. Like if there's a city-owned piece of property, you go like, okay, we're going to do a public-private partnership. We're going to make this land available to a developer. We want you to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to, you know, charge you $1 for this piece of, or whatever, some nominal amount. So now the economic, what might have been sort of impossible with pure market forces, you're able to say like, okay, well, we own this anyway, and we're not doing anything valuable with it. We're going to make it available, and we're going to get something for it as a community, because now we have this place. Not necessarily we're just going to get a bunch of money, but we get the place that we all said we wanted. So there's a few different ways to do it, but it's not super, you know, one size fits all.
Right.
Yes.
And at one time, you know, the people that own the shops, they lived upstairs.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's been from way back.
Yep.
And that kind of went away.
Yeah. It's usually illegal now, strangely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually you can't even do it, even if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So, and
But if
that's,
you made it into a loft,
yeah. The most basic thing we can do is allow that to happen.
Yep.
So, because and a lot of times with the historic buildings, even if they had 2 stories, like we have this beautiful Main Street in Franklin, and the staircases don't meet the building code, and so it's nearly impossible for them to have residential on the 2nd floor, even though people would die to live on our Main Street. So now it's all like accountants' offices and lawyers' offices. I guess no one cares what happens to them, but. I'm just kidding, by the way. My dad's a lawyer. So, all right, who else?
No one's mentioned detention ponds. All the new development seems to have the need for detention ponds, because we don't have the infrastructure to handle water. There needs to be something that, they're not the main thing you see when you drive by.
Yes.
Sharon Commons is another one. The detention pond is right up front, right next to my neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's the first thing you see as you drive by. It needs to be somewhere hidden.
Yeah.
Or fenced off so you can't see it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So detention ponds, and you know, funny thing is, if somebody said, You know, the thing I would hate to see was a farm pond out front. No one says that, right? Farm ponds are cute and charming and have cattails and whatever. But detention ponds somehow have to be hideous, but they're both ponds, right? Why is it one has to be so bad and the other is something that you take a picture and put on a postcard, right?
Detention pond normally doesn't have water.
Right. Well, and but retention too. Even no matter what, it's like an issue with the, it's an engineering standard, the engineering requirement, and they're usually just dealt with engineers, right? No offense to any engineers in the room, but it's not just a mathematical problem to be solved. So one of the things that we do in a lot of our private development projects is to focus on doing sustainable stormwater that is beautiful and actually adds to the character of a place. And so you don't mind it wherever it ends up, but whether or not we can deal with that with zoning, because you probably have your own set of engineering standards. But a lot of times, the engineering department's like, yeah, that sounds great, let's do that. And then you can sync those things up. So that's a good point, thank you.
Brian, to this point, I'd like to see more of a park setting, with a concrete walking path, definitely landscaped, and less of like I said, an eyesore. And there's a retention pond behind the oil change place next to Bojangles. It's all concrete, but every time I go over there, it looks nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I fell in, I don't know how I get out of it, but,
Shh, don't say that, they're gonna make you put chain link fences around it.
there's a fence around it,
Yeah.
but still, it looks much nicer than these retention ponds that we have in these neighborhoods.
Yeah, yeah,
There's two in our neighborhood, and you can't see either one of them from the streets.
yeah, when
Part of our budget is to maintain those two.
of course. Well, and over in Serenbe, they've got a pond in one of the little villages there, and they begrudgingly had to put a fence around it, but instead of just being a dopey chain link fence, they had some artists come in and they made this like fence, and it looks like reeds or whatever, and so it's like art, but it looks, it's like, okay, yeah. So they met the regulation, but it's added to the beauty of the place. Yes, sir.
There's a doctor's office they just built over here by McDonald's back door entrance.
Yeah.
Their retention pond is underground.
Yep.
Okay.
They have nothing above ground.
Yeah.
Their parking lot is on top of it.
Yeah.
I think that should be the standard for Loganville. I don't think we need any more mosquito pits. If you're gonna build a building and generate stormwater, then you should put the tank in to hold it till it perks into the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, so he was, for everybody who's at home, I'm trying to repeat what y'all are saying. So underground detention, retention, at the doctor's office there. I'm surprised that you have that here, because usually it takes land values to be pretty darn high for people to be able to afford to and willing to do it. So that's a good sign. It's a good indicator to me that they've done that.
Well,
So,
it keeps, if you're gonna build,
yeah,
and you're gonna build to our standards,
yeah,
then that should be one of the standards.
okay. Great.
It keeps out the low-end developments, it keeps out the low-end developers. In other words, they make permeable asphalt
Yep.
that actually leaches the water through.
Yeah.
But they utilize it over there, and I thought they were putting in a big pond.
Yeah.
Turned out they put in a tank and the fill lines, and that's where their stormwater goes.
Yeah.
I thought it was fabulous.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't use up their property, they actually used it for parking.
Yeah.
And you didn't end up with a big hole in the ground to grow mosquitoes with fence around it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it keeps
Or
out some
take
of
the
the
entire
less.
parcel of property to make a retention.
Yeah. No, you're right. Now we're working on a private development project right now, and it has on-street parking, and all the on-street parking is pervious pavers, literally it's like bricks, and it goes through and has stuff. And yeah, it certainly is a good approach. And to your point, one of the ways that you really can sort of elevate the caliber of development you're getting is having elevated standards. And it's a fair way. No one can sort of come back and like, oh, they're, intentionally kind of putting us out of business or whatever. And it's easy to say now at this meeting right here. It's a lot harder when we get to the end of that timeline and it comes time to vote for it, and then the developers and the builders are here and they're saying, and so just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. We know how to write standards that ultimately work for everybody, even them. And the thing about it is when the quality of the overall community comes up, it makes it easier for them to do some of those things that may, you know, like those examples of those houses I showed. You know, I asked that home builder, I said, why do you do houses like this in one city and one community and this in another? And they said, well, that's a different market. And so you need to become that different market where they can make sure y'all make sure you're always getting their best, you know? So,
Well, if you want the best, you gotta strive for the best.
yep, that's why we're here. Yes,
So it sounds like you've kind of driven around our area.
yes.
In your expert opinion, where have we gone wrong? How did we end up how we are?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yes,
yeah, that's like a loaded
and you're
question.
amongst friends. We're looking to,
Well, how about this? How about now that we've heard what y'all are saying, now we're gonna be able to go back and look at the things that we saw in our tour, you know, and it gives more context to it. And in 3 days, I'll give you a better answer. How about that? Fair enough?
cop out.
Yep. I'll just say, anywhere they cut down all the trees, that was a problem for me, right? Anytime I saw the same.
We already paid for a tree
Yep.
ordinance
Yeah,
that didn't get approved.
yeah. Well, anytime I also saw, the same houses repeated over and over, and it's like, wait, that's a different name than that other neighborhood, or subdivision, not even neighborhoods, they're subdivisions, right? And so like, for me, it's normal, but I'm just like,
It doesn't
you know,
improve the area,
yeah, so,
make it desirable.
yeah, there you go. So I've gone on a limb far enough for you now?
A little bit, good try. It's a good start,
So I'll give you better answers maybe on Thursday, so. All right, who's ready for dinner? Supper, yeah, all right. Well, it's not provided, so y'all gotta go. All right, y'all have a good night.